Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a safe place for leading with your heart. Hey, thanks for being here. You, Me, Empathy is the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective, a collaborative mental health community designed to empower each of us to grow our capacity for empathy, vulnerability, and emotional wayfinding. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. No one is just a silly boy with a feely heart. You can support the show by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts, following us on social media at Yumi Empathy and Feely Human, and joining the Feely Human Collective community at feelyhuman.co. And now your host, Known Wells.
Hello, Feely Humans. Welcome to another episode of You, Me, Empathy. My name is Known Wells, and this is episode 188 on Unmet Expectations, Purity Culture, and Feelings within Evangelical Christianity with my guest, Caleb Campbell. Caleb is a former NFL player. He is now a Feely Human. And we explore the glorification of hustling in this episode. We talk about the untold grief wrapped up in expectations, as I mentioned, purity culture, and why there's no space for uncomfortable feelings in evangelical Christianity. We get into lots of stuff in this episode. I was so grateful to Caleb for being on this show, for being another Feely boy. That was really special and felt special to me. So really just grateful for this chat. Hope you love it. Before we get to the episode, though, I wanted to remind you that on August 24th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, I will be hosting, the Feely Human Collective will be hosting a new grief and writing workshop called As We Carry On, led by my pal Katie Huey, who's a writer, beauty seeker, and wonderful Feely Human in her own right. Really excited about this workshop. I hope you can make it. Again, it's called As We Carry On. It's a grief and writing workshop. There's plenty of spots left, so please sign up as soon as you can. It's only $25. Would love to see you there. You can sign up for that at feelyhuman.co. Go to the workshops tab, click on As We Carry On. The next thing I wanted to mention is that you can support me by leaving reviews in Apple Podcasts. I love to read your reviews. Haven't had a lot of new reviews lately, so please leave reviews. It does truly help out the show. The other way that you can support me is supporting Feely Human. As I mentioned, signing up for our workshops, buying merch. I have Sitting With My Feelings mugs. Feelings Are My Jam stickers, lots of stickers, great pins, t-shirts, all sorts of things. So supporting me by purchasing stuff from the shop. Or even if you're a writer, you can sign up for the journal. You can write and participate in our journal. Haven't had a lot of activity there lately, so would love to see your voice, and I would love to champion your voice and share that with the Feely Human community. So go to feelyhuman.co and check out the writing guidelines there. The last thing you can do to support me is on Patreon. I have a Patreon for this podcast. I release bonus episodes every month for $5 a month. Go to patreon.com/feelyhuman to learn more about that and how you can sign up and look at the various reward tiers. I think that does it. Thank you for being a part of the Feely Human community. Thank you for being courageous enough to open your heart, to be vulnerable and curious, and Feely. Feely. That's the word of the day. You are Feely, and I'm proud of you. Thank you for being here. Let's get to the episode 188 on Unmet Expectations, Purity Culture, and Feelings within Evangelical Christianity with Caleb Campbell.
La 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 la. Me, empathy. Yeah. La, la, la.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective. On this show, we explore the struggles, the triumphs, the brights and the darks we face as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm just a boy with his feelings, sitting across from another boy with his feelings, a boy who grew up on a farm, graduated from West Point, was an Army officer, played football in the NFL, and who eventually made a heart-opening shift that led him here today. It's Caleb Campbell. Hello, Caleb.
Known, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm especially happy to have you here because I would say 85% of my guests are, female identified human beings, and so it's nice to have another feely boy on the pod.
Well, dude, I'm just thankful that another man is creating this space to have these brave conversations. As you were reading what your podcast is about just now, I'm like, this podcast can heal the world. If we can create more safe, inclusive environments and ecosystems that help facilitate these brave conversations about what we're feeling and the shame and the guilt around it, come on, man. I love it.
That's the aim, one heart at a time, right? Yeah. So, Caleb, we always kick off the show with an emotional check-in. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling well. I feel like for me personally, this last year, as for so many others, not just because of COVID, it's been a year of deep grief work. And on this other side of this grief work, it's created a lot of space in my life to invite in some beautiful things. And I'm just kind of in the midst of feeling deeply grounded, deeply present, and more of an active participant in my life than I've ever been.
That's beautiful. I like that. What I'm hearing from you is there's a lot of holding space for all of it, right? Like the grief and the centering and the grounding and the transformation. Tell me a little bit about the grief you've been feeling and experiencing.
Yeah, I moved to Los Angeles about 3.5 years ago. My wife and I currently live in Nashville. But when I moved to Los Angeles, I followed my heart out there. So no real agenda other than knowing that I deeply felt like that full body knowing that was the right move for me. And when you get to Los Angeles, it's just such a beautiful place because energetically you feel almost like everything and anything is possible. You just feel this expansive, energetic magnetism of life. And so I moved out there and I felt that, and it was amazing and it was beautiful. And I think somewhere along the lines, I just started to really expect my life to change. I started to expect my life to unfold in new ways, and it did. But when my wife and I decided to move to Nashville, I realized that I was carrying a lot of deep disappointment and grief that my life has not yet changed in the way that I thought my life would have changed, or I'm not where I thought I expected I should be now in life. And moving to Nashville was such this just so beautiful, because Nashville in a lot of ways, and I don't say this in any sort of derogatory way, it's much slower. And so moving here, it was very symbolic because I didn't realize in my life in Los Angeles how much I glorify the hustle, but what I was really doing is I was avoiding stillness. And when we got to Nashville, the stillness was my new bed that I was sleeping in. The stillness was the dancing.
Mm.
And so it allowed, that dance allowed a lot of these unmet expectations and unresolved disappointments to begin to surface.
Mm.
And so I've just been trying to really, in the last few months, create intentional spaces in my life so that I can honor that loss and grieve this like non-linear grief
Mm-hmm.
of, or non-finite grief of unmet expectations and unfulfilled dreams. And that grief has just created beautiful space for what is.
It's lovely. I mean, if there's a city in the world that sort of personifies outwardly the shoulds and the like meeting expectations and the hustle and like do this, do that, productivity, all this stuff, it's Los Angeles. Like that is the city. So no wonder. I mean, I think we all have felt that to a degree in our lives, and I would feel the same living in a city like LA. It really challenges part of yourself, like certainly the ego, that maybe we don't pay attention too much, or certainly impacts the more insecure parts of ourselves, right?
Yeah, I think it served me really well, because I think somewhere along my journey, I forgot how to dream. I think when I got to the NFL, and the NFL was like my childhood dream, I worked so hard from this, and I went to hell and back to make that dream a reality. And it was wildly disappointing, not only because I self-destructed inside of the NFL, but also I felt like I was lied to. Like you told me, or somewhere along the lines, I internalized a message that said, if I can reach this, if I can get here, I will find what I'm looking for. I'll find this deeper sense of acceptance, this longing to belong. And I got there, and it wasn't what I expected. I didn't find what I was looking for. And that was what kind of created this very self-destructive approach to life. But I think because of that, I have been scared to dream again. I've been scared to put myself out there and to really go after something, because I just didn't want to be disappointed again. And so much of my healing journey has been reclaiming that part of the innocence of that young boy inside of me that was and still is very fully capable of dreaming. And getting to Los Angeles, I think, lit the match, right? That, hey, there is this big, beautiful, quoting Mary Oliver, Caleb, what do you plan to do with this one wild, precious life of yours?
Right.
And being in Los Angeles really did ignite something inside of me.
There is something very sad about, it is a lie we all buy into, I think. But at the end of the day, there is this truth of like wanting to be, we want to belong. We want to like find our people, like what you were saying earlier. We want to find these safe, brave spaces to grow with one another. And when you show up in a world like the NFL or LA, or like, there's so many systems that do this, where it feels like, and maybe and I'd love to speak to like the specific environment of the NFL, but like, it feels maybe like it's everyone's out for themselves a little bit, Yeah,
it's just, it is a job.
Yeah.
Right. And performance matters. But in a lot of ways, it's just not safe. It's not emotionally safe. And I think a lot of what we experience from the relationships that were modeled to us as from our parents that were also deeply wounded, and just inside of churches, right? Inside of corporate America, as we're seeing with the Me Too movements, there are not these safe, emotionally safe, inclusive environments for people to show up their authentic selves, right? And that's what we are we are dying on our feet, as we are so thirsty to find something that's more alive and more satisfying and more real.
Yeah.
But that first requires us to find emotionally safe spaces where we can stop pretending. And unfortunately, because performance is valued in so many across the board and everything that we do in our lives, it's not safe, right? Because me, in a lot of ways, opening up to you about my vulnerabilities actually can cost me my job. It
Sure.
can cost me, hitting this key metric that I need to hit so that I get the bonus, so I get the raise, or so I keep my position, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's a messy journey to navigate, but a necessary one.
Well, and that's the thing. It's the messy process that I think needs to be held higher than the achieving, the performing, the checking boxes, the winning, right? The crushing, the killing, all this language that we all buy into, right? It's the process. It's allowing people to be who they are and to fail and to struggle and to hold all their humanity through that process and be curious about it, right?
Yeah, I was having a conversation with this 19-year-old freshman at Yale. And we were having a conversation because I was kind of doing some market research and just really wanted to hear her story, because she's this young, thriving woman inside of Yale, 1,600 SATs, 36, on her ACT, the president of every, high school committee that you could think of. But she also tried to take her own life at one point. And we were having this conversation, and I said, what do you wish your parents would have done differently? And she says, my parents were great. They did the best that they can. But the way that they thought they could connect best with me is to look at the areas of my life that I was succeeding in, right? And then they would always ask me, how's that going? How's this committee? How's your grades going? How's your favorite class going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what she did is, because these were moments of connection where she felt like she belonged, she prioritized those points of conversation, those points of topics inside of the conversations that she had with her parents, which makes sense, right? So I need to prioritize these things if this is when my mom and dad are going to connect, or how they're going to connect with me. And she said, I wish they would have asked me, are you happy?
Right.
How's your heart? What are you feeling? Yeah. Because she said, maybe, just maybe, I would have prioritized my happiness above getting a good grade. And I think that was just such a powerful example of just what are we prioritizing in our conversations when we are spending all of our time around the water station or the coffee pot, and we're either talking about gossip or we're talking about key metrics and performance, right? Because I think Brene Brown talks about it. What a culture values, we fear that we are not. Mm-hmm. So if the only thing we're talking about in our lives is performance-driven ambition, hustle, right? It's what we value. And so we're going to prioritize that in our life, and we do it at the expense of our emotional wellness. And a big part of my message is, how do we expand our lives consciously? Because when we don't expand our lives consciously, we lose ourselves in the process.
Yeah. No, I think about kids and emotional development a lot, as someone who was raised in an environment that, was often, a little scary, a little sort of, for a sensitive, feely boy like I was, like, I did a lot of armoring up. I just built so much armor and repressed because that was the survival tool. Yes. Like, that was what I needed to do to survive, a violent father, to survive a system, like, obviously within my family, but like the system at large growing up in the 80s and 90s that, to your point, like, we don't value these things. We don't value emotional vulnerability and talking about mental health and all these things. Do you relate to that? Like, how was your childhood in that way?
Absolutely. I relate to that. And can I just say that is such a beautiful reframe, that you did that to survive.
Yes.
Right. It's just such a beautiful reframe, because when you reframe it like that, you go from self-hatred to self-compassion.
Exactly.
Like, I love myself so much that I would go to such great lengths to protect myself at all costs, even if that meant destroying my life.
I've had to do a lot of EMDR work, Caleb,
beautiful.
On this. And going back and telling that little boy, just like, hey, your sensitivity is a strength, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And to go back to your initial question, most definitely. I think I love my parents dearly, and I think they did the best that they can. But undoubtedly, especially my mom, she lived wildly, vicariously through me. And me succeeding was her succeeding. And I don't think she really gave me the space to be sad, because sadness would get in the way of my dreams. She didn't give me the space to be afraid, because fear would get in the way of my dreams. And so it was definitely from an early age, a drive on, do more, be more, work and perform your way out of these feelings, right? Because I promise you, they'll go away one day. But in addition to that, I also grew up in the Bible Belt of Texas in an evangelical home. And inside of the church, there was no space, zero space to have any sort of uncomfortable feeling arise, because when you tried to talk about your fear, you were met with a scripture that says, well, in Christ, there is no fear, right? Or in perfect love, love casts out all fear. Okay, great. But I still feel really afraid right now. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there was no space inside of the evangelical church for us to be the feely humans that we are, because it would be met with pray more, worship more, Jesus pay the price for this, or however you want to say it. And so from an early age, I just was taught to believe that my feelings don't matter as much as my productivity or my performance. In fact, my feelings will get in the way of those things. Right. And so from an early age, it was most certainly deny, suppress, repress, hide.
Yeah. Yeah. It's devastating. And I'm so grateful that, you're looking at it with honesty and you're working through that stuff, because it's devastating. As the Yale student you're talking about, it leads to, especially in men, so much suicide, so much death, so much self-hatred. I also was raised in an evangelical leaning Christian home. And, I am at a place now in my life where I'm sort of like open to all of it. Like I think because of the work I've been doing the past like decade in sort of in therapy and EMDR and just all of this stuff, I've come to a place of like curiosity and openness and surrender and like acceptance. Beautiful. Like those are the truths that I want to like seek.
Beautiful.
And the way that you describe evangelical Christianity and the way that I experience it, it felt like the opposite of those things.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I often say, when you start to heal, when you actually go down this journey of healing and opening up your heart space and diving deep and learning how to just drown willingly, you experience love. Like you really do experience this new way of life. And I often will say, when you taste it, like there's no going back, right? When I taste just a little sliver of freedom or peace or fulfillment, I'm like, oh man, I want to gobble up all of this, right? And I don't think inside of the evangelical church, we actually experience deep healing, right? And so what we have to do is we don't build an identity around love. We build an identity around teachings. We build an identity around being right. And that's why I think in a lot of ways we have deeply undermined the message of Jesus when it comes to advancing the kingdom of God here on earth, right? Because we have built this identity around being right. And so therefore we value people making the same decisions as us, or seeing the world the way that Christians see the world, or saying a prayer so that one day they can get to heaven, supposedly, instead of missing out on the incredible opportunity that the church has collectively to build these safe, inclusive environments and actually share a message and facilitate brave conversations that can and hold space that can help people heal and actually taste love. And if we had built an identity around love, we wouldn't be so threatened by other viewpoints.
Is it fear, do you think? Is it fear driving all of that?
Yeah, I think that it takes a remarkable sense of trust and letting go to surrender and to fall into the arms of grace and to really experience love, right? The love that holds you up when everything else is just falling apart. And there is such a supernatural, spiritual, energetic rest that comes when I know that something outside of my ability to hold my life together is actually holding me all together. Something or someone, whatever you want to call it, there's this source, there's this God, there's this love, there's this environment, ecosystem that's holding me up. Like that, like to go through life like changes everything. But the doorway to that is through a downward descent. It's paradoxical. The way into rest isn't this upward trajectory that we know so well, the willpower, the hustle, the do more, the achieve more, the be more, right? It's a letting go. It's a surrendering. There comes a time in your life when moving your life forward doesn't come through doing more, but learning how to resist less. And that's hard. And now I think in order to protect ourselves from the vulnerability, the deep vulnerability of letting go and surrendering, we have built this identity around being right. And it is driven in fear, the fear of fully showing up and allowing myself to come undone, right? Because our whole life has taught us that if we come undone, either they're going to be there for us, or it's going to never end, or it's going to swallow us whole, or whatever it might be. But that's the message of shame. And so I think, in a long way of answering your question, I do think a lot of it is fear and, this unwillingness. And I have so much compassion. What I'm talking about, this surrendering, this letting go, whatever that might mean to you, like that's damn hard. It's scary. I think you have to be a little bit of a sociopath or crazy to want to run into this burning building on purpose.
Sure.
Right? Like something might not be all there, but it is the doorway to expanding our lives spiritually, relationally, emotionally, financially, all around.
I think expanding is a great word for that, because when I think about, certain modern forms of religion or evangelical Christianity, it's a narrowing, right? And to your point, like what we all need to do, I feel, is expanding all of it, expanding our curiosity, expanding our perception, expanding our willingness to step forward, to look back, to step sideways, our willingness to listen and learn and to shed and to all this stuff. But there are people within my direct family who there's a great deal of narrowing and a great deal of I'm just going to keep adding more and more armor to this armor. And like the layers underneath are like really like tenuous and they're falling apart, and they're just like adding more and more armor on because, to your point, they need to be right. They need to, it's safe. Yeah.
Right. And it looks like loyalty. Feels like devotion, but is it? And what you spoke about is like this deep sense of curiosity. Like I tell people, if you want to walk away from God, I'll be the first to tell you and encourage you, because God is going to be walking right alongside of you as you walk away from God. And I just think there is my wife shared a Rumi quote with me the other day. And it was just like, it summed up my experience and like my full, I think, transitional journey of Christianity into, I don't even know if I call myself a Christian as much as maybe more of a mystic. Rumi, he said, I quit crying out to God when I realized that I was immersed in God. And I feel like that has been my journey, where it started out constantly crying out to God, and there was this illusion of separation. Right. But as you heal and as you transform and as you learn how to, one of my favorite authors, philosophers, poet, teachers, Richard Rohr, when we live in the present, we experience the presence of all around us. And that's life. That's the life-giving energy that we are all longing to find. It happens in the present, right? In the healing journey, when we get to the present, we remove that illusion of separation and we become one, and you feel that in a real tangible way. And I realize in a lot of ways, like me crying out to God, or what I've been looking for my entire life. You hear all the great sages and the great Buddhas and teachers will say to you, what you've been looking for has been with you this entire time.
Right.
And I remember at one point in time, I was like, I hate you. If you ever say that again, I will permanently delete you from my podcast folder. Like, you are no longer in my life. You are dead to me. But now that I've ventured down this road, it's been a 10-year-long journey for me. I realized that the ground that I've been trying to attain is the ground that I've been standing on all this time.
Yeah. That's deeply empowering to me, because I think I know we all have that capacity, right?
Yes.
It just takes a little bit more brave looking, I think.
It takes really learning how to drop down from your head to your heart. And I know that sounds so like,
no, I hear you.
Esoteric, right? But like, what does it look like to be heart-centered people and to allow and to really trust that there is a deep knowing in you behind the layers of pain and the facades and the pretending? There's this deep knowing in you that is guiding you, longing to guide you into a deeper experience of life. How do we, one, create the space that we can hear and to know that voice, right? And then how do we start to honor it and say yes to it? And that takes so much courage. It takes so much trust to say yes to that deep knowing, because a lot of times it's not the logical choice.
Well, I mean, we are a society that values big brains over big hearts, right?
Come on.
We need to flip that, as you know. We need
not that brains are irrelevant, right?
Right. I mean, well, that's the other piece of it, is like, we also need to look at things less in a binary lens and more in like, we can hold both of these things to be value, right?
I love you already, man. I think we just became best friends.
So, when you started like coming to these things in your own heart, as a young man, and you started opening up, how was the response for people in your life and maybe the systems that you're in, NFL, et cetera?
Yeah. So I started as a response to getting cut from the NFL for the third time. I was in the league, and it was just a really unhealthy experience for me in a lot of ways. The NFL, and it's nothing against the NFL, right? Like, I think a lot of times we have the propensity to demonize those things that are closest to us when our world starts falling apart.
Sure.
The NFL
and throw the baby out with the bathwater as well. Yeah.
The NFL was such a gift because it just applied enough pressure to my heart to really surface the unhealed trauma and unprocessed grief and the suppressed emotions. And I didn't have the emotional toolkit to process that in a healthy way. And so I self-destructed and I blew up my life in the most unimaginable ways. And then I actually found a random church on Twitter, drunk as hell one night. And whatever it was, there was this deep knowing in me that I was supposed to be there at that church. And so not even joking, I packed my bags, I drove to Canada, I walked into a random church, and I said, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm supposed to be here. Because at this time, I'm not following any church. I don't feel like I'm, part of the church or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I said, I just need help, and I'm supposed to be here. Can you help me? And the pastor looked at me and says, I think we can. And I went from playing in the NFL to sleeping on the basement floor of a church in a boiler room and became a janitor of a church for almost 6 years so that I could start this process, my healing journey. And what I often tell people is that as I walked away from one life that was no longer serving me, and, it usually comes at a massive disruption in life. And that disruption, and this was, I think for a lot of people, was COVID. This disruption in life is the doorway for you to finally sever ties with life, with relationships, with jobs that are just feeling too small and no longer serving you. And that doesn't always mean you walk away, but sometimes it does mean that you walk away. I walked away, and sometimes the work is staying in it. I want to be clear on that. Sometimes the work is staying in it. And as I walked away, I realized early on, to answer your question, just how lonely the journey can be, because you realize that not everybody else sees what your heart is telling you. Mm-hmm. Not everybody else feels the direction that you're going. And oftentimes, one of the more challenging dynamics of this journey, I would feel like, are grieving the relationships that have been with you up until this point, but are not called to go with you beyond that point.
Yeah.
And it's really, really lonely. And so I think for me, that, and for a lot of people I see, it's just like that is a terribly lonely season, but necessary season. And then I think, if am I answering your question? I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was just like a lot of people just looked at me and like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, could not understand why, especially I'm a graduate from West Point.
Yeah,
and
you're
we're a
West Point,
brotherhood,
Army officer. You were
right?
in the NFL. You've
I
got it
had a
made,
lot
right?
of job opportunities. I
Yeah.
had a lot of job opportunities, and I was so grateful for them. But I knew that the problems or the challenges that I was coming up with in football were just going to follow me to any job that I went to. And that's when I said, like, I got to walk away and go discover who the hell Caleb Campbell really is. And for me, that looked like making a really gigantic leap and a very, dramatic decision.
Yeah.
And it was necessary for me. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people didn't agree. They thought I lost my mind. They thought I joined a cult. But the most beautiful and some of the most sacred moments of my life would happen 2, 3, 4 years later when somebody would say, I get it, Caleb. I see what you were doing, and I want to honor you for honoring your heart, because now you have created the space in my life to do the same.
Amazing. Yeah. I feel all of that so deeply. And I've been through it myself, and it is lonely and it is scary. And it looks different for everyone. For me, it was, my heart almost stopping. I had anorexia, I have clinical depression. All of these things were just like mashed down. And then it was just, a lot of like destruction, a lot of substance abuse, a lot of just destruction before, sort of, like one of those rock bottom moments, right?
Yeah.
Where you like have this epiphany of like, do I actually want to continue living, right? And what does that mean, right? Because I don't know if I did that before. I don't know if I did that for the 25 years before I lived on this planet, right? So like, what does that truly look like? And I'm so grateful that you're pointing out the piece about like when we grow, when we're on our journey or whatever that looks like, there is natural grieving because you're going to lose people. Like people aren't going to understand. They might come around and that's wonderful. But we have to honor that for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Always. Yeah.
I love that you asked that question, because it was similar to me. It was like, I remember waking up one day, and I honestly, I just remember waking up, and at this time, I have to remind you that I'm the least self-aware person you've ever met. Like, I have never processed an emotion intentionally in my life.
Yeah.
But I wake up one day and I'm like, there's got to be more to life. Like, is this the only way? Like, am I missing something? Because if this is, especially growing up in the church, if this is the life and life to the fullest, an abundant life that I've been taught about, I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think just having this, and that takes courage in and of itself, just having this willingness to say, man, is this the only way?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you're a janitor at a church, which is just magical. I love that. I mean, that's very poetic. I think even like I feel like it's a very poetic story. You're doing this janitoring at this church. Like, I'm curious about we are men, right? We have our feelings, we have our sensitive hearts. Like, how has toxic masculinity played a role in your healing and maybe your destruction as well?
Yeah. I often say, to speak to the latter part, the destruction, I don't honestly know if the cultural norms around masculinity played a very big part in my life as much as the church norms around emotions played and led to the toxic masculinity behaviors that I demonstrated throughout my life. I grew up on a farm, kind of in a very small town. I was in a lot of ways hidden from a lot of things. I think to a degree, my mom or my dad's, the relationship that they modeled to me, my dad, and what he modeled to me, what masculinity was, I think a lot of that was received subconsciously. My dad is like very stoic. He's a cowboy. He doesn't feel pain, and he doesn't talk about it. But in addition to what I mentioned earlier, my mom not giving me the space, really, I think a lot of the repressed emotions that I experienced came from the church's inability to hold that space for me. Inability, unwillingness, or just naivety. I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, after I left the NFL and I started this journey, I was so hungry for change. There was a deep desire in me to taste real life and what was possible for me. I think I was really guarded and protected by, I essentially went underground, literally and kind of metaphorically. I went underground where I tuned out the entire world in a lot of ways. I did talk about my journey a little bit on social media, and people were just so confused on what I was doing. But never once, as I'm laying on the operating room table, metaphorically speaking here, and having my chest ripped open so that I can do this open heart surgery inside of therapy, never once did I think really like, what are people going to think about my masculinity?
Yeah.
Like, what are people going to say about me? Like, is this weakness? Are they going to see this as weakness? That never honestly crossed my mind. And because I was just so hungry for change. Now, as a result, has it changed the way that I see masculinity? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I asked because, and I'm so grateful to hear that, because I share the same. Like my sort of like father was not someone who I looked up to. So I like naturally, even to this day, as a nearly 40-year-old human person, have a chip on my shoulder about men. They have to like work harder to like earn my trust, a little bit. Right.
Well, you probably naturally connect with more women, right?
I do. Yeah, I do. And it's because, of who I grew up with in terms of my dad. But when I think of toxic masculinity, like as someone who I never played football, like it felt too like tough and strong and like projecting to me. But I did play like 30 years of soccer, into college and all that stuff, right? And when I think of big, multi-billion-dollar forces like the NFL, like the Army, even, like I think of toxic masculinity. I think of like, we value strength. We value we value stoicism. We value we do value the repressing of our emotions. And I know these things sometimes are insidious in that they get under our skin and they impact us unconsciously.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it ever is going to change, or if I just think there has to be such a willingness as men to say yes to our journey, to say yes. If you are in this place of feeling like, I feel like I'm a caged tiger and I want to let loose and I want to roam. And right now, maybe that's being demonstrated in an unhealthy way through rage or these sudden outbursts of anger, right? That is an indication. Even as I look back at my life, there is a longing inside of you that's just so deeply trying to connect with this more expansive, more free way of life. And that is on the other side of you learning how really to become more in touch and in tune with your heart, with your whole self, with your masculine and feminine that's within all of us, the yin and the yang, however you want to see it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if culture is going to initially create this safe space for us to do that. As much as we have to go and to find and to seek out, or just open our heart space and ask God, ask the universe, whatever you believe in, to bring this space to you so that you can go and now heal and bring that back to your culture.
Yeah.
And start shifting in that way. Because I think that's where we're at right now. I think a lot of men are waking up to the realization that they're living half lives and the whole life is available to them. And I'm just so grateful for the men that are willing to do this work and now integrate it into their everyday life so that we can be a walking, living testament, breathing testament of what real, full, expansive life feels like, right?
Yeah.
At least taste it, because we never satisfy it. That's the beautiful thing about unconditional love. You can never satisfy it. You can never exhaust it. Let me use that word. You can never exhaust it. And there's always more that we can step into. But again, the more and this is leading back to you, what you said about like the professional sports or the military, the more doesn't come with do more, achieve more, persevere, keep going, fight stronger. Like that's all good and great. But you're going to have to learn how to use those intrinsic qualities of resilience and grit and perseverance to surrender, to let go.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I do, like, it feels equal parts like overwhelming to me, but also feeling very hopeful. In that, I mean, you're here talking about your feelings, Caleb. You're a man. I'm a man doing this work. Like, I think it just takes more one heart at a time. Like, that's really what it is. It's like more people willing to open up, and that allows others listening, others in the vicinity, others sort of picking up on those conversations to feel like, hey, that doesn't seem so bad. Like maybe I can do that too, or maybe I relate to that, right? Like that is the jam. Yeah.
Or it's just, in a lot of ways, it's what the latter part, I think a lot of times early on in my journey, I would hear people say things and my ears would perk up and I'd be like, my heart would suddenly, stand up and I'd be like, oh, wait, what does that mean? We don't know what we don't know, until somebody or we experience maybe a work of art, song, a movie, or a relationship that suddenly models to us what is available, what is possible, right? And now the journey becomes like, how do I ask the right questions? And then how do I, in the midst of these questions, how do I live in the tension of these unanswered questions and really learn how to, in that liminal space, learn how to self-regulate, process emotions, be brave and have brave conversations, stop pretending. All of this requires emotional safety, might I say.
Yep.
Right. And this is why the beautiful context of relationships are so powerful. And I think why marriages, and why, even if you look at scripture, why it was so important, because there is no healing without vulnerability. And there is no real vulnerability outside of the context of relationships, whether that's friendships, community, or even partnerships, right? Romantic partnerships. So when you can find that safe space, right, now your whole journey goes from just asking those questions and living in the tension of unanswered questions and holding space for yourself and just leaning into the discomfort of life, your growth edges. And it's uncomfortable. It's scary, but you wake up one day and you realize what once would have deterred you or what once would have crippled you, right? You no longer has that same sort of effect on you. And suddenly you're like, oh, I'm literally reclaiming agency in my life. And this is what I think we're looking for in a lot of ways, is we are looking to become an active participant in our life, where we get to drive our life forward and co-create with the universe and experience the fullness of what is available for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Spot on. I think about like that and the liminal spaces, right? And like we as a society placing so much emphasis on having answers, right?
Mm-hmm. They're comfortable.
Right. And I also think about, like I say this as an anecdote on the show a lot, but it's very pertinent here, which is like, I have major depressive disorder. I go through periods of time where I ideate on suicide constantly. I am at a place in my life where I can honor it. I can see it. I can be witness to it. And I can know that because I've been through it before many times, that I can get through it, that it's not going to kill me, right? And like, I think we hold so much, whether it's through childhood experiences or traumas or unsafety, right? We hold so much where we get to a point where so much feels unsafe and so much feels like it's going to kill us. But when we can be brave enough in those safe spaces, we'll learn pretty soon, pretty quickly, that really the thoughts, the feelings, like these things aren't going to kill us. They're just there to be looked at, to be questioned about, right? To be curious about, all that stuff.
Yeah. First off, I honor you. Deeply honor you. I think that's like what you're doing is no short of just, a miracle. And it's remarkable. And so I honor you for finding the courage to sit in that darkness for as long as it takes to see the light, because I find that, like you said, so much of our journey that we're taught to go on is to escape it. Right. And that can look like escaping it through alcoholism. And it can also look like escaping it through in search of another promotion.
Sure.
Right. And so it really is the journey. And when you can give yourself that permission to feel it and come out on the other side, and you realize that you're still standing and actually feeling a little bit more confident, right? Like I often say, when it comes to self-confidence, there is a stark difference between having confidence in your skill set or your talents, which is one level of confidence that I think we know very well.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's another confidence, this inner confidence that comes with knowing that you have found the courage to sit in the midst of your darkness for as long as it takes and until you see the light. And what happens is because on the same side of that, with you talking about depression, like I've always lived with this debilitating ache in my life. And this ache, it was either something is wrong with life or something is wrong with me.
Yeah.
And the way that I thought that I would remove that ache, and this has been like really the fire behind my pursuit of success in life, was to do more, to be more, to achieve more. If I could just reach this level, if I could just experience this, like at some point this ache has to go. But I got to this point where, like, no matter how much I did or what level of life I went in, that ache was still there. And I realized that although it was celebrated by society, by my friends, because it looked good, right? There was no amount of performance that could outrun the ache. And a lot of the healing work was actually, I think it's Rumi again, has the quote of like, every unwanted emotion, think of it as like an uninvited guest to your house, right? And you have to stop shutting the door in its face. You have to find a time to open up that door, to invite it in, and to give that uninvited guest, or maybe that unwanted guest, a seat at your heart's table, because it all belongs, right? It all belongs. And if you can start recognizing that you're not getting that promotion, or you're not getting maybe that deep, satisfying partnership, you're not getting that thing that you want, it has little maybe to do with your skill set or your boundaries or your, pros and con lists or your talent. And it has everything to do with you avoiding that deeply uncomfortable feeling that you are so desperately avoiding. So now if you can just find yourself and give yourself that permission. And for me, when I started giving my permission to make friends with this ache, I think this is where Buddhists get it right. Like this radical acceptance. If you can learn how to accept it. And what does acceptance look like? I talk about a lot of times with people, like people are afraid if they accept their current state, they will never actually find their way out. But on the contrary, if you can find the courage to accept your current state, what you do in the journey of acceptance is you actually inevitably deal with the fear of your life never changing. And when you deal with the fear of your life never changing, because that's the emotional side, inevitably your life changes. And that only happens when you start to learn how to radically accept. And I think that's what you've done. And that's what I had to do with the ache. And the ache has dissolved in my life.
Amazing. Yeah. I think of the Buddhist, I think I get the quote wrong, but it's pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what it is.
Right. So, there is going to be pain, and accepting that there is going to be pain is part of the journey, is part of that healing.
Yeah.
If we don't accept, if we resist, more suffering. That's just suffering at that point, right?
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. I'm being blessed by this.
So speaking of being blessed, I've been watching your lovely, hilarious videos you and your partner have been doing on purity culture, which is like something like it's a word, it's a term I've like heard maybe the past like few years in spaces. And I think it's fascinating. I related to so much of what you said, having grown up in an evangelical church and feeling, sinful and wrong about my natural desires and stuff. Can you tell me a bit about your personal experience with this?
Yeah. So again, I think inside of the church and growing up, there was this big movement that hit the 90s, and it was called like kind of the purity movement. And it was a movement for abstinence, because inside of biblical Christianity, marriage is a priority, and God designed sex only for the inside of a covenant partnership. And so
family values.
Family values. And so I think there was this time where topics like homosexuality or depression, or not depression, or abortion, and also sex became kind of like these three pillars that evangelicals still stand on.
Yeah.
And so what happened was, because the church only talked about sex in a way that was fear-based, right? It was only fear-based. You can't have sex outside of marriage. God will not bless your sex outside of a covenant partnership. If you do have sex outside of a marriage, it can lead to X, Y, and Z, right? STDs,
You're living in sin.
In sin, all of these different things. You start to kind of really get scared. And so, and again, right, what a culture values, we fear that we are not. And so we are trying to live up to these standards of really like keeping this posture, our heart's posture, geared towards a posture of, honor towards God when it comes to sex. The problem is there was no other conversations around sex. There was no other conversations around sexuality or pleasure. Right. I still have to, even inside with my relationship with my wife, talk out the shame that I feel from pleasure. Right. And so because there was no conversations inside of the church, and the church really in a lot of ways modeled our lives, evangelicals' lives, there was no conversations inside of our homes. Even when we would be watching TV and a woman would come on and she would maybe, like having cleavage, or they would talk about sex on a movie, like the go-to was to either cover your eyes or mute the TV or turn it off and fast forward.
Yep.
And so everything that we was taught to believe about sex or sexuality or pleasure was seen negatively.
Yep.
Right. And then as I am becoming from a young boy to a youth into a young man, obviously, biologically, things are changing in my body. Urges, sexual desires, right? Sexual thoughts, more desires, more thoughts. And because there was no safe space for me to talk about these things, I hid it. I suppressed it. I denied it. Right. I just bottled it up, and I just didn't act like anything was there because there was no safe space. And as a result, I couldn't help but to feel wildly ashamed and broken, that there must be something wrong with me if I'm having all of these sexual desires or thoughts running rampant in my life. There must be something wrong with me, right? Because this is only for somebody inside of a marriage. Why do I want it now? And the shame that I would feel from that. I think when I moved to LA, I really just in LA started to unpack the shame that I carried around my body and my sexuality that was directly linked to the purity movement. Like shame, and honestly, what has been the driving force behind my entire life, because my entire life has been driven from this fear of being exposed as somebody that doesn't have what it takes. And that was a great fear for a while. It motivated me to do great things, got me to West Point, became the second player in the history of my school at West Point to get drafted, one of the first players in the history of my school to be able to play in the NFL, right? But then I get to the NFL and this fear of being exposed, it crumbled me. It crippled me, because now I couldn't perform my way out of it because the NFL was good. Everybody was good. And so I didn't realize at that time, but it was the shame that I derived from the purity movement in a lot of ways that was crippling my life and leaving me feeling so disconnected from myself and disconnected from everything else. Did I explain that well?
Of course.
Sorry, I talked a lot.
you reflected your reality, which is beautiful. Yeah. So I feel a lot of that. When I was growing up, I I felt the same. I felt like, like having these thoughts was bad. Masturbation was bad. You're going to go to hell, all these things. I didn't do that. I mean, I didn't repress in the way that you repressed. I did masturbate, and then I just added more shame on top of me. And I remember having an experience with a boy early on in my life, right?
Yeah.
I was, maybe 10 years old, right? He was like 13. And it putting aside any sort of like, there was no like taking advantage of. It was just like, what is this? Curiosity, right? But I felt so much shame. There was the level of shame of I am being sexual, and the level of shame of like homosexuality is a sin, right? And I hid that, and it like tore my heart apart. Like I really wasn't able to talk about that until maybe 5 years ago with my wife, who I've been married to for 11 years, and that makes me immeasurably sad. I'm grateful that I'm able to talk about it, but like think of like how much I am resisting, to go to your point about like opening our hearts to the world and experiencing all of its beauty. Think of like how much I am missing out on because I'm sort of abiding by these archaic, sort of self-immolating, self-denying, spiritually bypassing choices. It's scary, and it exists so much in this world.
You hit the nail on the head when you said, how much am I missing? Right. And I really am so sorry that you had to carry that weight for so long, but I'm so thankful that you found your wife and you were able to talk about that, because I'm sure that was just so healing.
Absolutely.
In so many ways. I remember when I started to do this work around healing the shame around my body and around my sexuality, and I, just being candid here, I had a moment where I had to ask myself, I'm like, am I gay? Because I felt so much freedom. I felt this whole new wave of love wash over me. And I didn't realize how much, how do I say this? I didn't realize kind of how much the fear of the potential homosexual behavior that was so regarded as sinful in my upbringing, how much of like how scared I was of that subconsciously. Right. And I was afraid to deal with the shame around my body and around my sexuality because it protected me of like building up these hard cases against it.
Yep.
Right. And built up like, even when I wasn't like overtly vocal about it, right. I've always been kind of one that's been welcoming of anyone and everyone, but it was just like growing up in the evangelical church, you can't help but to have this very jaded kind of viewpoint of certain things, because especially
you don't really have a voice.
We don't have a voice, and we built an identity again around being right.
Yeah.
And so I just think that there was this time when I started, even when I opened up about healing shame around my sexuality, that's what people's responses were. So are you coming out? Like, are you gay? I'm like, can we normalize discussions with men healing shame around their body and around their sexuality and still being heterosexual?
Yeah.
Like, because it's damn needed, because I can directly tell you, and I will stand so adamantly to this, and maybe you heard it on a video. You show me a man full of rage. You show me a man that is just overt against the LGBTQ community and adamantly against it. And I will show you a man that has so much shame around his sexuality.
Absolutely.
And I stand against that. Or I stand with that over and over again. And it's just, I didn't realize how much life I was missing out on until I looked over on the other side of the door of the shame around my body, around my sexuality, around pleasure, around sex, that had been carrying my entire life.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful. And I too, I just wanted to share this and empathize a little bit. I too had a moment as a late teenager, early 20, thinking, am I gay? Right? Because of that, just repression, that because of all that shame. And, I'd imagine many, many people have experienced that same thought, right? Because they haven't been able to be themselves, right? They haven't been able to live, to their heart's truth. So I love it. I love it. I'm so grateful that you and your wife are having those conversations, because you talk about like the 90s purity culture. It's still very strong. Like it's still
very strong.
It's like a persistent, it's just this insidious thing that holds a lot of us back. So I'm grateful you're sort of destigmatizing that a bit. Yeah. I am someone who, I'm a human, so I get caught up in the like productivity, the like achieving game. We all do it, right? I have found that, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, that finding my own unique, specific, unique to known ways of rest have been very sort of crucial and revolutionary in my healing. Like, so my question to you, Caleb, is what does rest look like for you?
That's a beautiful question. I think there is rest that we can talk about, like sleep patterns, our behaviors, alcohol intake. I know for me, on a surface level, I've reduced alcohol, 95%. I've reduced it about 95% in my life. I'm
5 months sober right here.
Congratulations, man. That's amazing.
Alcohol was not serving me.
Not serving you, right?
Yeah, not
so
serving
I've the same way. I've reduced my intake greatly. I also, have a pretty adamant sleep schedule, and I started doing, 90-second to 120-second cold showers every single morning.
Oh, wow.
I've been doing this for almost 4 or 5 months now. And can I just tell you, I've never felt more energized in my life. It's been life altering. I've never felt more rested, more energized in my life. But to go a little bit deeper, what does rest look like for me? I think for me, it is a necessity that I create this space in my heart and in my life for stillness. And so that I can feel in tuned and aligned and present in my life. The more I'm living presently, the more at rest I feel. And that is this, I call it the sacred dance. It's this beautiful dance between showing up in this masculine energy, but embodying this feminine energy of letting go. I'm showing up and I'm doing the work, but I'm surrendering the expectations of how I think it's going to turn out or what I think it's going to become. That is such a beautiful dance back and forth. And it's really frustrating when you're getting into this harmony or this cadence, this dance in life, right? Because a lot of it, our willpower, our masculine energy wants to override and overtake it and just run with it. And I still have to go, as soon as I feel anxious about something, as soon as I feel like, I'm a keynote speaker, I speak full time, and I'm trying to get this new speaker reel put together. And as soon as I start feeling like I just feel my claws come out and grip tight of it, right? I know that I'm suffocating the dance, right? I'm smothering the dance.
Yeah.
And so now rest looks like letting go, creating space in my life to get more present, and just trust. As you said it, as you venture on this journey long enough, you're going to get to this place where you realize that your life is being held outside of your ability to hold it all together. And this is first, and this is such a priority. This is such a necessary experience, because if you want to find rest, and this is what I feel like true rest comes from when I no longer have to push the river of my life forward anymore, because the river is already flowing and now I'm in it.
Yeah.
The only way that I can float and allow the river of life to push me and propel me forward is if I've learned how to first rest, and knowing that someone outside of my ability to hold it all together is actually holding my life together.
Yeah.
And that's rest.
I love that. I think that's the perfect answer. Like because you're like, there's so much gnashing of teeth and resisting and like flexing our muscles and like, holding up the river when we're already in it. Like I love that. It's beautiful. I love it.
It's my journey, man. I want everybody in the world to experience the rest that comes with knowing that the river of your life is for you. It's moving. and it's going in the direction that you want to go. You just have to learn how to stop pushing, stop swimming upstream, and allow that river to take you where it's meant to take you. And that's the most alive, because love wins. Love is the abundance, is the natural world. Love is this world, right? We are living under this ecosystem of love, and love wants you to win more than you want to win yourself, right? Love wants you to succeed more than you want to succeed yourself. And so everything that is happening, even though I'm not saying that doesn't mean you don't see it like this always, right? It doesn't mean that it doesn't come by really hard and painful and deep grief and loss and failure and mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Man, everything is leading you in this direction. The more that we can realize that, the more that we can just realize that the way into this river is by learning how to resist less. And the first step, I think, is recognizing, how do I create more space in my heart and in my life to actually resist less? Because that's a weird question. Like, what does it mean? Just ask yourself that every day. Like, what does it mean to resist less? What am I holding so tightly on that I can let go of? What am I just so determined to make happen?
Yeah.
Right. What is it? What am I suffocating in life? Like, give yourself some room to breathe, and it remarkably changes your life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I love it. Yeah. So you're a keynote speaker, which I could tell you speak like one, which, yeah, that's beautiful. What types are you talking about? This kind of stuff? Is this like kind of the main thread of your keynote speaking?
No, nobody signs up to hear a message on how to be more vulnerable in life. No, it is my message in a lot of ways. I've had to learn how to reframe it. I think I am adamant on helping people and sharing a message, and that helps people expand their lives consciously.
Yeah.
Because when I said it maybe earlier, when we don't expand our lives consciously, we lose ourselves in the process. Like, we're always trying to step into the more, which you should be, right? There is this innate desire in us to grow. We are meant to grow physiologically. This is why when we stay in the same patterns and the same behaviors, we start to wreak chaos in our life, because we're literally being led into a journey of expansion, but we're holding on, right? Because expansion doesn't come without first a contraction. And that contraction it's hard, it's messy, it's the healing journey, right? A lot of times it looks like deep grief, paying attention to my loss, dealing with my fears. But on the other side of this is expansion. It's a bigger, more satisfying, more fulfilled, more purposeful, more aligned, more present, more grounded way of life.
Yeah.
So I think in a lot of ways, my message is, how do we expand our lives consciously by learning how to take let's talk masculine energy. How do we take our determination and our willfulness, right? And how do we integrate that with the power of vulnerability and emotional skills?
Yep.
Because when we can integrate those two, we win. Our self-worth wins, our relationships win, our sense of fulfillment wins, our sense of purpose wins, and most importantly, our mental health and our emotional wellness win.
It's wonderful. I'm glad you're taking that message to the masses. It's essential, as you know.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah. Well, Caleb, the last question I have for you is a section of the show where we talk about our empathy heroes. So I'm going to ask you in a second who your empathy hero is, but I will name mine first to give you a second to think about. So this is just someone in our lives who's deeply empathetic, compassionate. It could be even, you mentioned Rumi, you mentioned Richard Rohr, like could be someone like that even. Could be even a character from a story we love, right? I will go first to name my empathy hero this week, who is, I just wanted to give a shout out to my friend Sahar Martinez, who just got her doctorate. She is a doctor now, Dr. Sahar Martinez. She got her doctorate in focusing on perinatal and prenatal, or perinatal and postpartum health and mental health in people of color, and addressing racism in clinical spaces, which is so essential and so present for many of us now. So I just wanted to shout out Sahar. Proud of you if you're listening. So proud of you, Sahar Martinez.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Shout out to her as well. I'm proud of you. I don't even know you. That's amazing. I think for me, my empathy hero, as soon as you said that, it's undoubtedly my wife, Kara. for several different reasons, but my wife, she holds the most sacred space for me, and she gives me the permission to come undone. She gives me the permission to sometimes crawl, my way through the deep grief that I feel. And if you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm a 4, so I'm a very deeply feeling person, despite the 19-inch neck.
I'm a 2 with a 4 wing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so my wife, she just holds this beautiful space because she's done the work herself, and she's not threatened by me coming undone. And I'm just so amazed at her, because I think when COVID hit, she saw and felt this disruption of life as an opportunity for her herself to move into something more satisfying and more real. Mm-hmm. And for her, that looked like, walking away from being really a celebrity chef in Los Angeles to now really taking her passion with food, and using food as this connective source to help women heal their bodies and their relationship with food and their relationship with their bodies. And so she does a lot of incredible work, one-on-one in groups with women that are either looking to heal their relationships with their body or heal their relationships with their food. Also, how it directly ties to the relationships that we have with other people, including romantic relationships. So she's doing the journey. She's on it herself. And the beautiful part about that is when you're on it yourself, you can then hold the space for others, and you can be more empathetic for others because you do recognize what they're going through as well. And so she's definitely my hero.
I love it. We can wave hello in our fellow inner tubes on the river, right?
Yes.
I love it. Well, Caleb, where can the Feely humans out there connect with you, learn more about the wonderful work you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm slowly picking up Instagram again. It's just a weird environment at large. But Instagram, Caleb_Campbell, that's CALEB_Campbell, like Campbell soup. Or you can find me on my website at calebcampbell.me. I always love hearing from new people. So just feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Amazing. Well, Caleb, thank you so much for being a part of You Me Empathy. Thank you for sharing your big Feely heart. Grateful that you exist in the world.
Thanks, Nolan. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring, pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You Me Empathy.
Love.